UFC.com. I'm your host, Lee Martin, here to talk UFC. Joining me today, I have SBR's UFC expert, David Manyun, and MMA Mania's lead host, Matt Ryan. Before we get into all the good stuff, like always, go ahead, give us a like, subscribe to our channel, that way you never miss a show with us. Now let's get to it. Hope you guys are having a wonderful week so far. But before we get into this weekend's fight with Alistair Overeem and Augusto Sakai, we're going to go back to this past weekend where we had Anthony Smith and Aleksandar Rakic. Dave, I'm going to start off with you. I hope you're doing well today. Let me know how your weekend went. Did it go as expected?
Of recent, I've been expecting to crash out and burn because it hasn't been the greatest. But surprisingly, last week, I was one away from a clean sweep. 9-1 for the entire card predictions.
Nice.
Rakic pulled through as I expected. The problem I had with that fight was his consistency and willingness to just keep this fight on the floor when he didn't need to. I mean, anybody that watched that fight would have also heard that fight and those strikes that he was landing on Anthony Smith. Anthony Smith's poker face was on, boy, because they were hurting, and Anthony Smith wouldn't have survived those shots. Now, I understand Rakic was probably, hesitant of taking shots from Smith himself, but he was doing so well there. And look, he didn't fail on the ground, but it turned the fight into a stalemate that nobody wanted to see. And Rakic, he got the win, fair enough, but I just think he could have finished that fight. I really believe if he would have just stayed standing, it would have ended inside the distance. But either way, got the W. It was a good night all around, and we're back again.
Awesome, congrats. How about you, Matt? How was your weekend?
My weekend was fine. My hair continues to grow and get gray as these fights continue to drudge on. It feels like we're on the Oregon Trail of mixed martial arts. Every single week there are more and more cards, and as someone gets dysentery, I heard Dana White was trying to trade a fighter for a goat. It gets weird. But taking a look at the main event of last week's fight, Anthony Smith versus Aleksandar Rakic, leg kick city. Dave was on point with the sound of those strikes when you look at the judges and you hear those strikes. But even if you were the judges watching that fight, Anthony Smith is not the same guy that was on the come up to fight John Jones just over a year, 18 months ago. He's not that guy anymore. He's rumored to be going down to middleweight. I think his confidence as a fighter is diminishing. And I think that even though he was a veteran, he was a guy that was around, I think his time in the spotlight came too quickly. He burned up too fast, and he's going to fade away in two divisions now, 205 and at middleweight, that are stacked and are continuing to grow. So when you look at Anthony Smith, you're going to see a guy who's going to be slowly going down the card over the course of the next year to 18 months, unless at the end of this contract he walks away from the sport or signs with the PFL or Bellator.
Yep. All right. Well, now let's just jump into this week where we have September 5th. We're back at the UFC Apex. We have Alistair Overeem versus Augusto Sakai. So let's start off with the first fight of the main card. We have lightweight Thiago Moises versus Jalin Turner. On BetOnline, Moises is -162 and Turner is +142. Dave, I'm going to start with you if you can give us your breakdown and pick for that fight.
Yeah, I mean, the census of what I see online and, the people I directly follow and stuff, it seems to me like everybody is on Thiago Moises in this fight. So my opinion might be unpopular, but I'm leaning Jalin Turner. He's 9-5-0 and that record is not pretty at all, but this kid just has something about him. And in that last fight, he fought against a guy called Culibao, and do you know what? He's not nothing to run home about, but he just seemed to come on different how he has in his fights prior. He trains out of Millennia MMA with a guy called Lorenz Larkin. If you're an MMA fan, you might be familiar with him. And personally, I think Lorenz Larkin was the biggest loss that the UFC's had. They let him go, and I have no idea why. I can't remember the drama. It's been a while now. There was some political stuff going on, but we lost Lorenz Larkin. He is such a good fighter, and this is who Jalin Turner's training with, one of his close training partners. And I've also noticed that he's been getting his jiu-jitsu training in at Carlson Gracie. I went onto his Instagram, and I'm not sure if that's where he picked up his brown belt, but I know he's been with them guys, and that's where you need to be if you're going to fight a guy in Thiago Moises, who realistically is going to be looking for the submission in this fight. Now, yeah, he's 25 years old, and he's a Dana White Contender Series graduate, as far as I can remember. And he's got heavy hands, and his losses come up against Vicente Luque and Matt Frevola. Now, Matt Frevola is a strong wrestler, nothing to be ashamed about, and most of us know who Luque is. Incredible fighter. So, yeah, nothing to be embarrassed about. And then he's got wins over Kalen Potter and, as I mentioned, Josh Culibao, which aren't too significant, but his previous fight, that striking it seems so fluent and effortless for him. Now, Turner is a big boy for this division. He towers most of his opponents. It's like, literally, he could be a light heavyweight. I think he's 6'3", and his reach, I think he's going to come into this fight with a 5-inch reach advantage. He's got slick striking, and even on the ground, beautiful transitions, and his ground and pound is mean. And he mixes this up with elbows. Well, I say mix it up with elbows. He throws a lot of elbows, more so than punches when he's in the ground and pound position. So he's good. He's well-rounded. He's not too shoddy in the clinch either. Nice knees, very nice knees, which I feel like will be needed against a guy like Moises. Now, jiu-jitsu, it's going to be, for me, this is probably going to be a striker versus jiu-jitsu matchup. And the rolling guillotine, which led to the finish in the Culibao fight, was a delight. And then, as I mentioned, the elbows came after, and that's what ended the fight and put Jalin Turner back on the track he needs to be. The kicks and knees, just the well-roundedness of him, I feel he could edge it out against Thiago and Moises. Now, the thing with Moises is he's at the better gym, American top team. He's been there since he was 17. He moved from Brazil to Florida, and he's been at American top team ever since. I think he's 25 now, so that's like 7 years, 8 years with one of the best gyms in the world. So that's definitely something that you can think about for Moises here. But the first thing that stands out is obviously the level of competition. Moises has already fought a Russian prodigy in Ismagulov, a UFC veteran in Michael Johnson, and then another veteran. In fact, that was his debut fight against Beneil Dariush, which is, it's not the normal debut that you'd have or expect, but yeah, they obviously have faith in Moises with his background. And you take a look at his previous loss, he struggled against Ismagulov with the reach advantage, which looks like that could also favor Turner to be able to stay away from the inside and keep his range and strike at distance. Now, the win over Michael Johnson is impressive on paper, but if you watch the fight, you will see he got dominated up until his black belt came into play. And yeah, that was going to be Johnson's. That was Johnson's fight to lose. Johnson was the favorite, and to be fair, Johnson was doing great. Johnson looked impressive, and he got caught. He just got caught. Now, Moises, in terms of striking, he's got some nice leg kicks. He can strike at range as well, but I don't fancy him against a guy in Turner. He's just gonna have it all. The reach is ridiculous, as mentioned. Could be a light heavyweight if he really wanted to. Boxing style on the inside for Moises, but he's got the black belt. He's Brazilian. He prefers to take it to the ground. He's surrounded by a lot of heavy wrestlers at American top team. He's a former RFA champ, and look, I understand why the line is currently favoring him, but I just don't agree. Just the public, it seems as though the betting public doesn't agree either, because the line has moved from plus 170 on Turner and we're looking at plus 140 now. So although I'm seeing the conscious on Moises, there's bettors somewhere out there, and they are seeing what I'm seeing in Jalin Turner, and that's a chance to cash some dog money on a fight which is close to pick'em, in my opinion. So yeah, it's going to be Jalin Turner for me in the first fight of the main card.
All right, how about you, Matt? Do you agree with Dave, or do you have a different look on that
I have
fight?
a little bit of a different look. I'm going to go with Thiago Moises. Dave outlined why both fighters have a shot at winning, but when we take a look at Moises, you look at the American top team, and you look at the level of competition he's faced off against. Yeah, he got dominated by Michael Johnson, but he got the W. He stepped into his first fight in the UFC against a Beneil Dariush. You look at Jalin Turner's record, he's 2-2 in 4 trips inside the octagon, Moises has only one more fight in the UFC, but he's 3-2. He's one fight above 500. And to bring up Frevola and Luque again, going up against stiffer competition, he has faltered. He's lost against Frevola. He lost to Luque. But when you look at how long this fight is going to go, all of Moises's losses have come by way of decision. So once you get to the scorecards, it really is almost a 50-50 shot because Moises has won 4 by decision and he's lost 4 by decision. So the deeper this fight goes, it becomes more of a toss-up. I think Moises is going to try to put his black belt in the play. He's going to try to go for the win. He's got 6 wins by submission, 3 of them by KO or TKO. I think he's going to try to find a submission early, break down Turner, and I would go with Moises in this fight.
All right, well, there you have it. If you guys want to get in on that fight, again, via BetOnline, Moises is -162 and Turner is +142. Let's move on to the next fight with welterweight Michel Pereira and Zelim Imadaev. Man, I'm looking forward to this fight. I must point out, yesterday I looked on BetOnline. Pereira is -120 or was 120, and Imadaev was +110 or +100. Now I'm looking today. Now today, both of them are -110. Okay, -110 across the board. Matt, I'm going to continue with you if you can give us your breakdown and pick for that fight.
I think a lot of people are starting to see Pereira as not the threat that many thought him to be when he came into the UFC. There was a lot of hype surrounding Pereira, mainly because he's this over-the-top human being. But coming in on 2 straight losses, one of them an illegal knee, so you can understand that, he might have a little bit of the Greg Hardy-itis of a guy with a lot of potential, but also has a tendency to forget the rules against Diego Sanchez back at Rio Rancho. He did get a knockout in his UFC debut against Danny Roberts. He's knocked out 10, so inside the baby cage, inside the apex, he's got a shot. But let's take a look at Imadaev really quickly. He's 8-2. He's walking in with a really good record. Only one of those fights have made it to the 3rd round. So he's going to look for an early night. He's going to try to keep it in the first 10 minutes of that fight against Pereira. And when you look at he's lost his last 2 fights. So his last 2 fights, his only losses as a professional have come inside the octagon to Danny Roberts and Max Griffin. And Griffin ended an 8-fight winning streak where he finished all of his opponents by KO or TKO. No submission, no other fakakta way of winning. He dropped them where they stood. So I'm going to go with Imadaev in this fight. I believe that he'll have the momentum, even though he's coming off of 2 losses. Both of these guys are in make or break fights, but you see that line starting to pull a little bit, making it a little more even. And Dave, I think you might agree with me. A lot of people are starting to see Pereira as the emperor with no clothes on.
Yeah, well, there we have it. In the chat, we have Gabriel Katz. He said, you can't trust Pereira. Anything can happen. Dave, can you give us your take on that fight and what you think?
Yeah, look, do you know what? This card as a whole, there's a lot of sleeper fights on this one, and this is one of them that could be contending for fight of the night strictly because Pereira's involved. This guy has no sense of fight IQ. He must not feel that he needs it. We take a look at what was his loss where he missed weight. What was that loss? He missed weight in his loss, and he didn't have his team with him. Check that up for me. What was the loss before Diego Sanchez? Because he didn't have his team with him. He missed weight, and he then heads into the first Tristan Connolly, right? So he heads into the fight with Tristan Connolly, who's making his debut, and he blows it all out in the first round, and it makes no sense for a guy who's just missed weight. He doesn't have his team with him. I mean, maybe in his head he was thinking, I'll come out here and finish this quick like I have done prior on the regionals, and I'll get it done quick. But this type of style is not going to work in the UFC against the highest level of fighters. You can't come in here and start doing front flips and back flips. That stuff's great. That's going to make you go viral, but that is only going to last so long until somebody comes in here and absolutely beats the crap out of you. Now, Diego Sanchez wasn't the guy to do that. Tristan Connolly wasn't the guy to do that, but Tristan Connolly won. And Tristan Connolly won because of cardio, strictly because of cardio. Pereira is a big boy, and he wasn't able to cut the weight, but now he is cutting the weight. But also that size advantage that he's usually going to have is not going to get in this fight. Imadaev is a big boy. is 6 foot, and much like Pereira, they are both coming off a 2-fight losing streak. You could say the loser will be saying goodbye, but given Pereira's style, I have a feeling that Dana wouldn't cut him. I feel like there's more chance of Imadaev getting cut here than Pereira. But with that said, Imadaev has lost 2 fights. It's tough. He's 8-2-0, 25-year-old Chechnyan fighter, and we all love the Russians. They're dangerous. Usually it's an automatic bet. And prior to coming to the UFC, he won all of his fights via knockout. And then his hype died. He comes to the UFC, back-to-back losses. He trains out of Nicktone MMA with Zabit. So that's not bad at all, is it, to have the featherweight title chaser on your team, and fellow Russian. He's got strong grappling, he's got heavy hands, and look, he was beating Danny Roberts. Now, Danny Roberts, I love Danny Roberts, great striker. That 1-2 combo that Danny Roberts threw on Imadaev with 4 seconds or something like that, 7-5-4, something small amount of time left in that round. Pop the 1-2. That 1-2 is one of Danny Roberts' signature boxing moves. He's been doing that. He's an English fighter, so I've followed him well. I know he's done that exact strike and finished a fight before, actually. Don't quote me. I can't remember the name. It was unlucky for Imadaev, in my opinion. Now, his debut fight in a loss to Max Griffin by majority decision, that was also a good performance, which could have gone either way, in my opinion. Both Imadaev and his opponent coming into this back-to-back losses, just whether it is or not, they'll both have it in their head. No doubt the coaches will put it in their head that this is an elimination fight. If you lose this, there's a good chance that you won't get another fight in the UFC. So I just think Imadaev's going to come out and Pereira's going to do what he does and go crazy. Imadaev's going to be able to control it. And look, the lethargic style of Imadaev is definitely going to be tested as Michael Pereira probably comes out, does a cartwheel, backflip, into a jab. Like it's just pathetic what he's doing. Spin attacks, jumping attacks, front flips, you name the Bruce Lee film, and Michael Pereira has more than likely reenacted it inside his 35 fight career. Yeah, he's an interesting character. And do you know what else is interesting? That he knocked out Danny Roberts. Now, this is going to happen from time to time. Pereira's going to throw this wild stuff, and it is going to land because you don't know what he's going to throw. So it's hard to read what's coming. I think the best advice is just cover your chin, cover your temple, tuck it, and hope for the best when that guy's coming at you. But he's overhyped, as mentioned. He's overhyped. He feels out like a middleweight. He's got huge power and size, but that drains after the first round, especially with the style of fighting he brings. Yeah, it's all Imadaev's fight for me. Pereira's got obviously the crazy knockout chance, but I feel like after 5 to 7 minutes, it's going to be all the Russians fight.
It's the Aesop fable. It's the tortoise versus the hare. It's Imadaev, slow, patient plotting, and then we've got Pereira, who's basically just going to gotta go fast. He's going to go Sonic the Hedgehog and then end up with his head and assorted parts on the floor.
And look, he's a Russian. We all know that they just have grappling like Brazilians have jiu-jitsu. It's just there. And you put that on Pereira, it's going to drain him. And I think that's what's going to happen.
Yep, I agree with you guys on that one. So if you do want to get in on that fight, again, via BetOnline, Pereira is -110 and Imadaev is -110 as well. Let's move on to the next fight. We have every time there's women's in bantamweight, I say Winhams. Women's bantamweight. I'm looking forward to this fight because it's my girl Sijara Eubanks versus Karol Rosa. Via BetOnline, Eubanks is +110 and Rosa is -130. Dave, can you give me your take on that fight and also maybe break down why Eubanks is plus money?
Yeah, it's another tough one. Sijara Eubanks, her record is gonna scare anyone off instantly. 5-4. You know, you look at her age, 35 years old, but in reality, look, I faded her against Sarah Moraes, the Canadian. I thought was going to do well, and she was coming off a big win. And then Eubanks came in cash as a dog. I think she was a dog anyway. Originally for Sijara, she was known for, she had them weight cutting issues for that inaugural flyweight bout. And then Roxanne came in and got the title shot instead. That was rough. I felt real sorry for her because in an opponent in Nico Montano, we could have been looking at Sijara Eubanks as a champion. That's as simple as it is, because Montano, we've seen where her career has gone since. Not incredible. So look, she came back and she even took on Roxanne. I guess she was proving that she was the rightful fighter during, you know, that stint for the title. But it just doesn't seem to happen for Sijara. And now she's 35. She's coming off of a little win. I'm just not really sure, man. Because Carolina Rosa, she has the age on her side. She's gonna have the speed on her side. And look, her UFC debut against Lara Procopio, she was just settling in. It was a tough fight, split decision. But then she came back against Vanessa Mello and she really did took over. She'd got a unanimous decision in that fight. Didn't see her take it to the ground all that much, but she output. The striking was there, the output was there. And I really do think she can do the same against Eubanks. I think the path for victory for Eubanks in this fight is to try and utilize her strength. If she can hold her there, hate to say it, but make it a boring fight, hold her, keep her against the cage, get her strikes in and her output in that way. I think that's the path that Sijara would want to take, because with a younger girl, the girl that's also excellent on the ground, Rosa's Brazilian again. Look, I think she's a black belt. Either way, she's won loads of jiu-jitsu championships. She's got that ground game. So I don't think Eubanks is going to want to get on the floor at all. So it brings it straight back to the standing. If Eubanks wants to win this, she needs to control Rosa and not let... We don't want this fight out in the open. Otherwise, Rosa's just going to take through in the striking. She will win this at range, I believe. I think her kicks and her jabs can just build up and take a unanimous decision. And that's what I think that's going to happen. In terms of odds, if the odds swayed, did the odds sway from the open? And we got plus 140 on Eubanks. The money is coming on Eubanks, and do you know what? I'm not actually surprised, because she looked nice in her last fight, and recency bias is a huge thing, especially in MMA betting. A lot of people don't even watch the fights, but there's a few that will go and just watch the most recent fight, look at the odds and be like, yeah, that's great. I'll take that plus 140. And do you know what? In these types of fights, you can't blame people. It's a real close fight. The bookie opened Eubanks at 140, and they probably shouldn't have, because it is close to a pick-em fight. But with that said, when it comes to these female MMA fights, we always find value. Apart from last week, beautiful from the girls last week, we always find value in the decision, and I think that's what we're going to see here. So I think for me, I'd take Rosa by decision if I was betting this fight. But if you want to play it straight, that 140 on Eubanks is lovely, but that's long gone. So yeah, odds right now, it's probably, unless, you take the decision prop, like I said, it's a stay away, just because the line's moved, you've missed the price, and you're just shooting yourself in the foot long term if you're taking these prices once they've disappeared.
Yep. Well, how about you, Matt? Do you agree with Dave, or what's your take on that fight with Eubanks versus Rosa?
Well, Felipe Dinez in the chat saying Eubanks fought against a better level of competition. And that was kind of one of my key points here. And Dave brought it up earlier. When we look at Sijara Eubanks' record, she has losses to Aspen Ladd, Betch Correa, and Caitlin Chookagian. So she's fought 3 elite women's MMA fighters in the UFC. Now, Betch Correa, that's post-peak, so you're kind of getting a weird variable there. But she's fought Aspen Ladd twice, fallen to Aspen Ladd twice. She lost to Chookagian. She has knocked out 2 opponents, but none in the UFC. So that decision for me, and you look at Rosa's record, she's won 4 times by knockout, 2 times by submission, 7 by decision. So an overwhelming majority of her victories have come on the scorecards. And I think with her background, with her knowing that Eubanks is going to try to grind the entire fight, she's going to try to keep this on her feet. It's going to be down to, can Rosa, for 15 minutes, keep Eubanks from trying to stall and grind and try to pick up points against the fence. Dave brought up a lot of positives for Rosa. I think she's going to win this fight. I think it's going to be by decision. I think Eubanks continues to test herself against elite competition. And Rosa's on a 4-fight winning streak heading into this. So she's going up against someone who's been able to compile wins. And Gabriel Katz in the chat saying Rosa looked really good in her last fight. That was back in July. That was just under 2 months ago. So she's in weight. She's in competition. She had the fight on Fight Island back in July, but now she's back in the States fighting at the Apex. It kind of, all of the intangibles of this fight lead towards Rosa. So if I was, gonna put some coinage or look at this from a gambling perspective, I would definitely be going with Rosa for the win, because as Dave said, that line sailed far, far away.
Yep. All right. Well, if you guys do want to get in on that fight, again, via BetOnline, Rosa is -130 and Sijara Eubanks is +110. Let's move on to the next fight. We have light heavyweight OSP, Ovince Preux versus Alonzo Menifield. Via BetOnline, Menifield is -124 and OSP is +104. And now we all know that OSP is coming back and recovered from coronavirus. So I want to know if you guys think that's going to affect his fight night. So Matt, I'm going to continue with you. What's your take on that fight?
Anytime you're recovering from an illness and you're just recovering, like we were this fight, we talked about it 2 weeks ago. My notes are the same notes we had from 2 weeks ago. The only addendum is the fact that St. Preux is recovering from coronavirus. Menifield had those 2 weeks off to train and try to maintain weight, but in comparison to dealing with the biggest pandemic of the last 100 years, we need to look at it from that perspective. How does fatigue set in? How does the symptoms, if he was asymptomatic, or how do the debilitating effects of a airborne disease play on somebody? If he was coming into the fight with the stomach flu or some sort of other virus, we would be looking with a level of concern. And this is going to be a fight that's based on conditioning. You're going in there for 15 minutes. This is his return to light heavyweight. So not only did he have an extra 2 weeks that he was sick and recovering from coronavirus, from COVID-19, he had to make sure he was staying at 205 pounds and adjusting his diet. How far under 205 is he, or how over 205? Like, we don't know how much this virus affects fighters. We've seen a small sample size, but this is the biggest fighter to date that has caught the disease before the fight and had a fight rescheduled almost immediately. I could be wrong on those stats. Dave can fact check me on that one. But both of these guys coming off a loss, but OSP 1-3 in his last 4. He fought back in Jacksonville, so he may have been staying in competition weight. But for me, Menifield's the favorite to win this fight just because of all the whataboutisms that come from a fighter, especially someone moving back down to 205 from heavyweight, dealing with the aspects of COVID-19. The safe bet, the smart bet would be on Menifield, even though OSP has a better track record, is a bigger name, but the COVID of it all really pushes it in Menifield's direction.
All right. And how about you, Dave? Do you agree with Matt, or do you have a different take on that fight?
I completely agree when he's talking about the coronavirus. And that's the reason why my bet doesn't exist like it did 2 weeks ago. I was going to take the flyer on OSP and the dog money because I think that's the position to be in terms of betting. But with this, as mentioned, he's being sick and we don't know how sick. Now, this virus has affected people in different ways. Some people don't even know they've had it, little sneeze. Some people have been bedridden for weeks. So it's hard to gauge what OSP has been going through. Now, we should assume that he's fine because, he's a grown man. I'm sure he's smart enough to know if he's ready for a fight or not, especially against a guy in Alonzo Menifield. Are you going to be bedridden and then accept the fight? Probably not. But even with that said, has your training been exactly the same as Menifield? Probably not. The probables are annoying. I don't want to think about them too much. It's my birthday on Saturday, so I don't really care. This is my birthday card. I'm not putting too much pressure on myself. I won't be betting OSP because Menifield, look, go to, was it UFC Vegas 6? This fight was cancelled. Go listen to our breakdown there. I think I blabbed on about Von Flu choke and how it's the Von Preux choke, whatever. Forget all of that because, as we've mentioned, when an illness is involved, it's just, even if I love them odds, even if them odds are at plus 180, plus 200, I just don't know what OSP's been doing with his time. And he could have been in bed for the whole time trying to recover. He might feel great and then be like, yes, let's just go fight. And that's not a person I want to put my money behind, especially inside a small cage with a guy who has won 8 of his fights by knockout. Absolute vicious knockout. So, yeah, it's a stay away for me. But in terms of odds, I do think the value is there for OSP on an ordinary day. But it's COVID-19. It's not ordinary at all. So I'm just be hesitant with this fight.
Yeah, I might just wait until it's live and just see how he goes in the first round. But again, if you guys do want to get in on that fight via BetOnline, Menifield is minus 124 and OSP is plus 104. Now let's move on to the main event, the event we're all waiting for. We have the heavyweight Alistair Overeem versus Augusto Sakai. Via BetOnline, Overeem is minus 163 and Sakai is plus 143. Dave, I'm going to continue with you if you can give us your breakdown and pick for the main event.
Yeah, I love it. Look, anytime the heavyweights are in a main event, I love it because we've just got a higher percentage chance of a knockout happening, and that's what we all want to see. The arrival of John Jones into this division and the departure of DC brings an entire new landscape. We've got heavy hitters left, right, and center popping up. Guys, we've got newcomers versus the old school, and obviously because it is the heavyweight division, we still have a plethora of old dudes that are still hanging around. Our Lofskis, our Overeems, our Mark Hunts, etc. It's great, it really is. And now we've got Alistair Overeem, who's holding 60 plus professional fights against Augusto Sakai, who hasn't even touched 20 fights yet, I don't think. So yeah, it's definitely a new school versus old school, and I am taking the old school because yeah, I got lucky. I got real lucky. I bet Rose and Strike against Alistair Overeem, thinking that Overeem would not be able to take that. And boy, did he take that. And you know what? He got knocked out, but I took more away from that knockout praising Overeem because he took that for 25 minutes. He got hit and it it should have put him out, but it didn't. So it's nothing to do with a aggression. And this is what I was thinking about. You look at Overeem's career and you look how many fights he's had. He doesn't have that many knockouts for the amount of fights that he's had, like against him. He hasn't been knocked out back to back times. He hasn't been knocked out an incredible amount of times for the amount of fights that he's had. His chin held up, and I think his chin can hold up against Augusto Sakai. And I believe if that chin does hold up, Overeem is the mixed martial artist in this fight, whereas for me, Augusto Sakai is the striker. Different strikers, might I add. We've got a kickboxer versus a guy who's going to want to get on the and make this more of a dirty boxing type of style of fight. But Reem's got the leg kicks. Reem's got the striking at range. Reem has the wrestling. Reem has the ground game. Reem has more tools in this fight. And in my humble opinion, I just prefer Overeem's style of striking. 20-year plus experience in kickboxing, along with fighting for Pride and Strike Force, UFC for the last 10 years plus. I love Alistair Overeem, and I'm glad that I can back him in this one and feel good about it. It's all Reem for me. It's Reem. And that recent knockout over Walt Harris too, that is just putting momentum on his side, because Walt Harris, look, he had a height behind him. Walt Harris he's a strong, young heavyweight contender, and Overeem matched him plus. And yeah, I fancy his chances against another fresh blood here. Make that 15-2 for Sakai.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people are on Overeem just because last night before I went to bed, I checked the lines and Overeem was minus 145. And now this morning, Overeem is minus 163. So, Matt, if you can give us your breakdown and pick for the main event with Overeem versus Sakai.
Sakai is someone the UFC is pushing. He was featured on their website yesterday. They're trying to build more stars for the heavyweight division, even though the heavyweight division now is loaded. And also, a guy, don't know if you know him, was a University of Minnesota wrestler, NCAA champion, puttered around the Vikings for a little while. His name's Brock Lesnar. He's a free agent. And there's a lot that can happen there. So the heavyweight division right now is on an upward trajectory. And I think they want Sakai because they want to build it internationally. They lost out on Fedor. They've lost out on a lot of international stars at heavyweight in their prime. So they might be trying to latch on to that now because domestically their heavyweight division is insane. And then you've got Ngannou and Rosenstruik from international, but you don't have that next level Russian. You don't have the guy coming up in that weight class from different parts of the world, primarily. But Sakai could be that, along with that, could be that guy. And they're looking for those international markets when the world opens up again. They want to have more stars from different parts of the world, and Sakai could be that guy. But Alistair Overeem is Alistair by God Overeem, and his last three wins, have been KO or TKO victories. We can look past the Rosenstruik loss in December. That was a walk-off. That was something that I don't think could ever be replicated again. You go back to, as Dave said, that Walt Harris win back in May, and you can't compare Sakai and Walt Harris because of everything that went on with Walt Harris, and we still, his family is continuing to be in our thoughts, but it's still Alistair Overeem. This is a guy who continues to look good, whether it's due to vitamins or just the fact that he's Alistair Overeem. I'm going to take Overeem. I think that this ends by stoppage, and I think Reem's going to find a way inside the baby cage because you can't forget the fact that it's a smaller cage, so there's going to be less room to operate. And take a drink every time I say baby cage on this show. I think I say it at least show. But I'm going to go with Overeem. I'm going to go with the stoppage, and the heavyweight division will continue to be another of many interesting divisions.
Yes.
I like to hear.
Now, I'm just going to go over to the chat real quick, just because Joseph Gomez said the steroids helped Overeem a lot, but does have skill if you can outbox him early. If early, you'll win. Dave, do you have anything to say to that?
Yeah, I'd really expect Overeem to keep moving backwards during the early stages of this fight. He's going to remain hesitant of Sakai's power, probably engage a good read on Sakai's boxing. And then if Sakai takes the bait, then he's going to end up on the wrong end of Overeem's counter-striking and be looking up at the lights. I broke this fight down pretty well on SBR website. If you go to the UFC section, I have an article called First Look, and I really do dissect the fights, the main events each and every week. And I explain more on that in depth if you want to go check that out. But no, listen, you're right. Look, this is the heavyweight division as well. And we always have to remember this and always keep this in the back of your mind that the worst fighter who has a huge amount of power can still, it can be over within seconds. We see it time and time again. Look what happened in the Rosenstruik Overeem fight. Overeem was sailing to a unanimous decision of 5 rounds, but he lost a lip and he was knocked out. So that's what this heavyweight division can do. But no, bringing it back, I just think Overeem he's so good at reading, striking whilst in the moment that I think he can take this one. I really do. So I'm going to side with Reem. And the price just keeps getting better because people do believe in Sakai. And to be fair, Overeem, I think he opened at -180. I wouldn't have opened him at that. I am favouring him. I do think he's going to win. But this heavyweight division, when I see that price go outside of -200, unless it is, Ngannou, Cyril Gagné, or somebody that is just violent, then it becomes tough. It becomes tough because it works each way. You've got two heavy guys in that octagon more often than not that both are capable of putting you flat out. So yeah, I do stick with Reem, but he made a great point. Sakai is a good boxer. He is a good boxer. So anything can happen in this sport.
Yeah, and Anthony Devonti, I'm not going to read all of it, but at the end he says, Sakai doesn't impress me much, and I feel like a lot of people feel that way. So there we have it for this weekend UFC Fight Night. Alistair Overeem versus Augusto Sakai. If you are not following the guys on Twitter, give them a follow. You can follow Dave at @dmanion_, and you can follow Matt at @mryan consulting. And also, be sure to follow SBR on Twitter and Instagram. You can follow us at SBR Sports Picks. And also, if you do want to read Dave's articles, they're wonderful. I like to read them myself. Just go to sbrpicks.com/UFC or just click the link in the description. So again, that's all that I have. Good luck this weekend, guys. Thank you, Dave and Matt, for your time. Again, this weekend, September 5th, Overeem versus Sakai at the UFC Apex. Good luck, everyone. Until next time.